So, very good morning to whoever who's watching this. So, my name is Chen Zihao, and today I'll be giving a reflection analysis on the role play between City Confectionery and Bilby Health Snacks. So, first of all, let's take a look at the story background. Now, basically, these issues arose when Bilby's representative observes a young workers packing biscuits during a supplier meeting call. And therefore, there's concern escalated as they view this issue as a potential child labor practices in their supply chain. Now, this roleplay is divided into two main teams, the investigate team, which represented by Bilby Health Snacks, and the executive teams, which represented by CT Confectionery. So my role in this roleplay is actually the CFO of CT Confectionery. Now, there are several concerns raised by Bilby investigators, and the number one concern is actually reputational risk. And arguably is one of the most important points, and I'll explain a little bit about it. So reputational risk is very noticeable in this situation because the team of Bilby investigators, they view this child labor issue as a potential legal issue. And when there's a legal issue, it could lead to some serious issues like loss of consumer trust and reduce investor confidence, and therefore which reduces sales and market value of the partnership. Second of all, another concern that they raise is the legal and compliance costs, because the chances are when there's a child labor issues involved, there might be additional costs involving in having third-party independent audits, regulatory investigations, or even potential cost arises from contractual breaches. Now, my responsibility as a CFO is to analyze the financial exposures of child labor allegations and reassure Bilby's subsidy stability and commitment of this whole partnership. Right. So first of all, I want to approach this issue from an ethical perspective, right? So as a CFO of the company, obviously my role is to protect the long-term financial benefits of the company. But before we touch into that, let's take a look at just the fundamental, the deontological duty, the moral duty. Now, the deontological duty basically emphasizes that us as a company or us as an individual, we must act within the moral rights. We must act what is good and regardless of the outcome. Therefore, there are several things that we emphasize that we are committed to. The first is age and schooling verification. We emphasize that as a company, we'll act within our moral rights to make sure to verify the age and enrollment situation of our youth workers. Now, we also implemented a youth role risk matrix where basically we just doesn't let our youth workers to carry stuff that is heavier than 5 kilograms. We make sure there's no chemical, no machinery, and no night shift whatsoever. Now, another ethical considerations that I want to look at is the right-based framework by United Nations of Human Rights. It's called Respect, Protect, and Remedy Framework. Now, us City Confectionery, it's not denied that we are compliant with local law, right? The Malaysian Young Employment Act, it actually allows workers 15 to 17 to engage in light work. But we recognize that this is not the ceiling, right? This is the base minimum that we must comply. We also make sure to align with international standards, which is the ILO C138 and the C182. Notably, we also mentioned that we are willing to go extra. Like we wanted to provide independent audits. We even wanted to provide a remediation fund for youth workers by sponsoring fees, uniform, and transportation costs for them. Now let's move to the utilitarian theory. Now, utilitarian theory emphasizes that an action is ethically right if it produces the most goods or we produces the less harm. Now, in this situation, having acknowledged these responsibilities, acknowledge the responsibilities, spending money on independent costs is actually an action that produces the most goods, and here's why. Now, first of all, our stakeholders are able to benefit it because like our youth workers are able to work in a safer environment, and us in general, we're able to market ourselves as a brand that is responsible and is sustainable. And as our partnership of Bilby, they're able to safeguard their reputational and therefore lead to a sustainable business income. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is culture, the culture differences between Eastern and Western countries. Now, there's no deny that the Malaysian Children's and Young Person Employment Acts allow youth aged 15 to 17 to do light work. And in the Malaysia context, part-time or holiday work is actually something that's very normal and sometimes necessary for your family income. But the Western countries, for example, like Australia, they actually view this as a completely different issue. Notably, the Modern Slavery Act 2018, they require businesses to prevent or report risks of, forced labor or human trafficking that happens within the supply chain. Now, therefore, this creates a cultural tension between Bilby's and CT Confectionery, whereby in CT Confectionery's perspective, it's normal to have youth workers, while in Bilby's, it's like a very serious issue. And our job is to bridge the cultural difference and solve the gap. right? So what we're going to do is we're going to emphasize that T-Multi Works was legal, safe, and temporary. At the same time, we wanted to offer stronger safeguards, like I mentioned earlier, audits, group remediation fund, and many more. So through our back and forth discussion, we actually implemented our final decisions, which is to continue partnership under strict conditions. Like notably, we wanted to have independent third-party audits for every 6 months and, internal unannounced audit, like a spot check. We also wanted to provide remediation fund that covers the tuition fee, the transportation costs, so that we can benefit more youth workers like Timothy. That doesn't just stop there. We also wanted to do transparency and reporting, which includes 24 hours incident alerts with email and dashboard notifications and monthly dashboard with metrics on youth roles, audit, and remediation. Right. Now let's move to the most important part, which is self-learning and future application. Now, the first lessons I've learned is to integrate ethics into finance. Now, ethics and finance seems like two separate entities, and there's actually a very strong relationship into it. Now, let's think about it. Now, if an ethical decision is involved within a company, it might risk to reputation loss. It might risk to reduce investor confidence. And what do those translate? Those translate into lower sales, lower revenue, and lower equity or investment within the company. Now, in the long term, this actually effectively and directly hinders, the financial performance of that company. Another lessons that I've learned is the importance of, suppliers. Now, us as a company, we obviously has to act good in ourselves. But the thing most important is we also have to act within, we also have to try our best and, take reasonable steps to verify the quality or the practices of our suppliers. Because, strong suppliers quality and relationships are so important at maintaining customer satisfaction. Next, let's move to culture intelligence. Now, in international business context, it's normal to have different cultures, and we have to acknowledge cultural differences and committed to bridging cultural gaps in international business context. Sapita, emphasized that in cross-cultural settings, typical in international business, leaders with high cultural intelligence are better able to adapt their communication and behavior to diverse cultural norms. And finally is ESG and sustainability. Now, we have to treat environmental, social, and governance goals as part of financial planning, not just an add-on. Now, I want to emphasize one theory that Peter Drucker developed. Now, it's called social value theory. Now, the idea is that if a business acts within the goods of the society improves. And what that translates is to a better economic condition that leads to more disposable income within the society. And what that translates is the society will spend those money back into the business itself. So the business are indirectly benefited from it. And that's basically all from me. I hope you enjoy my presentation. And thank you so much.